Good morning, students! Welcome to our Valenzuela live streaming. This is going to be another exciting day to learn and discover about heat, work, and energy. But before we start, please keep in mind the following reminders. We are already on our 5th week of quarter 4 in the science module, and our objective for today is based on the most essential learning competency, and that is to construct a model to demonstrate that heat can do work. What are the things that you enjoyed during summer while staying at home? Maybe some of you loves to drink very cold water or any drinks fresh from the refrigerator. Or maybe some of you enjoys staying in your air-conditioned home. Wow! That was fantastic! But have you ever wondered how refrigerator and air conditioner works? In order for us to know this, we need to understand first what is heat and what is the relationship between heat and work. During your previous years, you have learned that heat is related to temperature. Let's try to recall them by doing a simple activity. Type true if the statement is correct and false if it is wrong. Use the comment section below. Number 1. Heat is an energy. The answer is true. Number 2. Heat and temperature are one and the same. The answer is false. 3. Heat is the energy that flows from one object to another. The answer is true. 4. Temperature is used to measure how hot or cold an object is. The answer is true. Did you get all the answers correct? Very good! It seems that you can still recall your lesson during your grade 8. Heat transfer may change one's temperature or one's phase. This change in temperature, either a decrease or an increase, means that there is an energy transfer in the form of heat. On the other hand, phase change means that there is a change in body's internal energy. Just like when you pour a hot water into a cup. Since the flow of heat energy is always from hot to cold, the heat transfer from the hot water increases the internal energy of the cup and thereby increasing its temperature. That's why when you touch the cup, it becomes hot. Before we continue to our discussion, let's have our trivia. Did you know that thermodynamics is the branch of physics that deals with the relationship between heat and other forms of energy? In particular, it describes how thermal energy is converted to and from other forms of energy and how it affects matter. The first law of thermodynamics is based on the concept of conservation of energy, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can simply be transferred from one place to another. So let's say we have a system. It can either be a biological organism, mechanical device, or the Earth's atmosphere. And everything outside of the system is the surroundings. Energy can flow into and out of the system, and there are two ways in which energy can do so, and that is through heat and work. So, if heat flows into the system and the surroundings perform work on the system gains energy. And that energy is known as the internal energy, represented by the symbol capital U. Internal energy of a substance is the sum of molecular kinetic energy, potential energy, and other kinds of molecular energy. So let's say if 150 joules of heat is added to a system when no external work was done, obviously, the system will gain 150 joules. Likewise, if the surroundings perform work on the system with 300 joules, then the system will gain 300 joules. A good way to illustrate this is to use money. Let's say if you donated 10,000 pesos to a charity, that charity will gain the 10,000 and you will lose the 10,000 pesos. If someone wants to gain money, someone has to lose. So in that sense, within the transaction, money is not created nor destroyed. They are simply transferred from one place to another, and the first law of thermodynamics follows that same principle. Another illustration is when you boil the water. The burner transfers heat to the water, and you will notice that the temperature is increasing, right? So what does the increase in the temperature indicates? It means an increase in the internal energy of the water. Take note, the substance has internal energy, not heat. The word heat is used only when referring to the energy actually in transit from hot to cold. Now, let us find out how heat is related to work. As mentioned earlier, heat transfer from hot to cold object or from higher to lower temperature. It is a natural or spontaneous process. It occurs on its own. Heat doesn't naturally flow from cold to hot. The only way for you to make it happen is if you were to pump an energy into the system. A good way to illustrate this is imagine if you have a ball on top of a hill. The ball will naturally flow in a downward direction or from high position to a low position in the same way as heat flows from hot to cold or from higher to lower temperature. Now, if you place the ball in a low position, it won't naturally go towards a higher position. The only way for you to make it happen is you have to put energy into it to get it over the hill. And the same is true for heat. Heat doesn't flow naturally from cold to hot, but you could make it happen if you can pump heat to warm up a certain environment. It is called non-spontaneous process. In so doing, work should be done. Mechanical energy is required for this to happen. The second law of thermodynamics is applied here. It states that heat will never of itself flow from a cold temperature to a hot temperature object. The work is provided by the motor of the heat pump. Heat pump is used to reverse the process of heat transfer. It is a device that allows heat to transfer from a cold reservoir to a warmer one, which cannot happen spontaneously or on its own. A very good example of this is a refrigerator. It will take out heat energy from inside the fridge and pump it outside of it. That's how a refrigerator can cool this stuff on the inside, but it takes energy to do that. For us to understand more about heat pump and how our refrigerators work, let's look into the major parts and components and basic working procedure of a refrigerator. Here we have a compressor, condenser, then there is an expansion valve and evaporator. These four major components together construct the vapor compression refrigeration system. Throughout the whole process, our main purpose will be to ensure that continuously cooling effect or refrigeration effect is obtained in this evaporator. The evaporator is the component where the refrigeration or cooling actually takes place. Now, let's see how these components work. First of all, this compressor pressurizes or compresses the vapor refrigerant. Here in vapor compression refrigeration system, we commonly use either ammonia or freon as a heat-carrying medium throughout the whole procedure. If pressure increases, it also increases the temperature, so the vapor refrigerant is converted to high-pressure, high-temperature vapor refrigerant. After that, this high-pressure and high-temperature vapor refrigerant will leave the compressor and enter into the condenser, where it will change phase and will be converted to liquid. Now, this high-temperature, high-pressure liquid refrigerant will leave the condenser and pass through this expansion valve, where it will be expanded inside. When expansion occurs, the pressure between the molecules decreases, thus the temperature falls. So this high-pressure liquid refrigerant will be expanded into low-pressure, low-temperature liquid refrigerant. At this point, we do not get only liquid refrigerant, but here, we actually obtain a mixture of low-pressure, low-temperature liquid and vapor refrigerant. Thus, we get a mixture of very cold, chilled, low-temperature liquid and vapor refrigerant coming out of the expansion valve. Then this will be passed over to the evaporator, where the main cooling effect or refrigeration effect always occur. The evaporator absorbs all the heat present in the surface of the evaporator coils. Then, this cold, chilled liquid refrigerant will completely turn into low pressure. After that, this low pressure vapor refrigerant will leave the evaporator and enter into this compressor through this connected pipe, and the cycle continues. Amazing, isn't it? This process has somewhat similarity with how air conditioner works. Now, let's study how air conditioner works. The major components are compressor, condenser coil, expansion valve, and finally, an evaporator. It can also be called a cooling effect generator. We have also a condenser fan and evaporator fan, and these are the connecting pipes that connects these parts together. Thus, a closed loop is formed. We all know that the basic principle of air conditioning is to remove the heat from one area and replace it with cold, dry air and expel the hot air to the outside atmosphere. For this exchange of heat, we use a special fluid which is called refrigerant or coolant. Think of this coolant as the messenger or traveler, because this coolant is the actual carrier or medium of heat exchange between the external environment and these internal components. We use Freon as the refrigerant. Freon is a fluid that flows through these connecting pipes and parts of air conditioner and changes states from liquid to vapor or vapor to liquid at convenient temperature for the air conditioning process. The first step of the air conditioning process is the compressor starts to pressurize or compress the refrigerant or Freon. Then, this high pressure and high temperature gas vapor or Freon will go to the condenser. In the condenser, this high pressure, high temperature gas or Freon will change its form from gas to liquid. Now, this high temperature condensed liquid refrigerant will leave the condenser and enter the expansion valve where it is being expanded. As mentioned earlier, the function of expansion valve is to lower the pressure of the refrigerant and cools it down. It also controls the amount of refrigerant or voltage flow entering the evaporator. Now, the low-pressure cold liquid refrigerant enters the evaporator, the place where cooling effect happens. This cold liquid is now ready to absorb heat from the indoor environment and produce cooling. The refrigerant in this evaporator unit absorbs heat from our home and converts it into vapor, and as a result, our home environment loses heat and cools down. Now, this hot gaseous refrigerant, after absorbing heat, again goes through the compressor and the cycle continues. Let's see if you remember the process of refrigeration and air conditioner. Arrange the following processes in order by typing the letters in correct order. You have 1 minute. Timer starts now. The correct answer is this. Did you get it right? Great job! Let us summarize our discussion today. Thank you, grade 9 learners, for joining me today in discovering about heat. Remember that science is fun and exciting as you discover new things around you. Once again, this is Ma'am Cherry, your science teacher. See you next week. here in Valenzuela Live.